Well, thank you for bearing with me. The online remote setting is not as comfortable for me as being in front of a stand where I can clearly see people and have better interaction. And, knowing that I'm sitting in my living room and feeling like I have to pretend other people are there, or not living room, but office. So I hope that this was valuable for you, and we can kick back and chat for a bit, or you can ask questions. The rest of the time is yours.
Honestly, just knowing about coroutines and the evolution there was, I would say, is probably worth the price of entry for me. I thought that was really interesting.
Well, I'm glad that that we got that far, because the other 80% was.
I mean, the other stuff was good too. I mean, I think I had a pretty rudimentary understanding of that. And it's funny because like a lot of my history in programming, I started off in VB.net, and one of the common things you would do was like, oh, the UI is being slow. You call this function. It was, I can't remember what it was called. It's basically saying run events. And it would just like, it had this, you're just running all the events in this event loop of sorts. I just had this weird mental model about it. I'm sure it's more complicated than that, but it helped me in understanding Node a little bit better too. Oh, well, thanks for doing this. It was really, really fascinating. I'm sorry it's not as interactive. You might want to look at, if you're not using Zoom, I think there's a setting that shows people who aren't showing their video. So I know you.
Well, I think it was just my bar wasn't big enough. Like I clicked show more, and then it showed everybody, I think.
I know Ethan doesn't have his video up, and Brandon doesn't either.
Yeah, I see them.
Yeah, okay. There's Ethan.
Yeah, it's just, I think it depends on which way I move the thing.
Yeah. My whole life is Zoom right now, so I don't program as much. I got real good at it. But,
well, we had the Rust meetup, which was actually really, really good. If anybody's curious about WASM, I will post. I'll try to post both videos at the same time, this one and the Rust meetup from last week, and include both links, because the talk on WASM was great. It was very low level. It was mostly kind of like, this presentation was mostly about the building blocks that we had to use to get to realizing that event loops were what we needed. The presentation was mostly about the low-level assembly features that WASM implements and emulates to create optimizable bytecode. But it made me actually understand what WASM is. And then for the last 10% of the presentation, that was like, and this is what a Rust binding looks like with WASM. Because he did such a good job of stepping through everything, immediately it clicked for me, and I was like, I get what WASM is. And he showed actual compiled code. He showed Rust code, he showed compiled code, and then he showed the standard library, which included like the memory allocation functions and stuff. I mean, it looked like a mess, but he was able to, because it's auto-generated, so it wasn't, it's not like you could easily read it, but you could see the names of things, in the same way that in minified JavaScript, you can still see the names of certain API calls. Likewise, you could see the names of certain things in the Rust standard library amidst the auto-generated code, and it just made it click for me. And now I think I understand WASM and what kind of cost and benefit, because there definitely is a cost to WASM. You basically, you have to include the runtime of the language just like you would with anything else. So like in Go, the runtime is like 4 megabytes if you were to just compile a Hello World Go program. and I'm sure that there's some sort of special optimization for WASM so that the runtime is somehow smaller, but maybe not. I don't know. But in Rust, if you're just to print hello world, you're looking at maybe 8 kilobytes, 4 kilobytes, depending on whether it's debug or production or whatever. But I think the minimum is something around 4 kilobytes, which in today's world with JavaScript, that's like nothing, but it can be a lot in some situations.
Well, should we call it?
I'm good to call it.
Okay. Thanks again, man. It was good.
Yeah, that was great, AJ. I was worried about the online thing, but I think it worked just fine.
Well, I'm glad to hear that, because the whole time I feel awkward sitting in front of a computer screen with no people and like a couple tiny icons of men in space.
Yeah.
Well, and an airship.
Yeah.
Or Navy helicopter pad. It looks like a helicopter pad on the ocean.
No, it's an Apache on an apron somewhere. Not in the ocean though.
Anyway, yeah. So I'm glad to hear that you feel that it went well, because it just feels so awkward.
I thought it went well. Thank you.
Good. All right. Well then, hopefully we'll see each other in real life soon. And we're going to be posting these things on YouTube, and we may continue to do the Zoom to try to link in people that are in Lehigh or whatever. But I imagine we may have at least one more of these. But people are starting to get stir crazy, and they're starting to speak out. So I think this thing is coming to an end until the next wave.
Yeah. Oh. All right. I'm going to take off.
Thanks. Good night, everybody. Thanks, AJ.
Thanks.
Night.
Thanks, OC Tanner. See y'all.
Right. Good night.
Good night.
Good one.